Madewell has expanded their existing partnership with thredUP, becoming thredUP's first ROS. That's resale as a service, in case you needed that reference. I did, because I've heard that a few other times. But ROS is the big thing that thredUP's going forward with now. They are going to launch a 360 resale platform with Madewell. So Madewell's had this platform in existence before where customers can bring in their pre-loved denim, but now customers can shop that section of the Madewell site to buy any brand of jeans, not just Madewell. Kristin, you have been following resale really closely. I'm going to put you on the spot, though, for a deeper dive question. And then, Dave, we're going to go to you, because this week, instead of A&M putting us on the spot, we are putting A&M on the spot. So Dave and Kristin, with the resale market expected to be valued at $64 billion by 2025, that's in just a few short years now. What do you think is keeping more retailers from adopting this more quickly? And what should they be thinking through as they approach bringing this in-house? Kristin, how do you answer that very important question for retailers?
So I think the biggest challenges that brands really think about is how is it's going to impact their first cost business, right? So they're thinking, am I really trading the customer down here? Bottom line, as you mentioned, this is a growing market. We know that sustainability is increasingly important to in particular, the Gen Z customer. I think brands have to figure out how to do this versus how to make money with this versus not to do it. So,
right.
So you're going to have to do it. So what's the best way to do it? And I think that what we can see from Madewell, I like the idea of really clearly segmenting the two offerings. I do have some concern, with what Lululemon's doing and what that in-store experience, is like. Although knowing Lululemon, they'll figure it out. So I think the biggest challenge again that many brands are facing is that question of really what's the impact to my first cost business.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that you bring up a good point, Kristin, too, in that, this concept with thredUP doesn't really require the retailer to have to do anything. Like, people are still just bringing in their bags of stuff. It's pretty low friction for both the customer and for the retailer, because then they're being sent off, they're being photographed, and then they're put on there. It's not like, what some of the other retailers might be thinking of, where like this is now a barrier or another thing that our in-store retail staff will have to tackle. Dave, you guys are working with some of the biggest and best brands. They got to be, I have to imagine they got to be asking you guys questions like this. How do you tackle resale? How do we profit off of this? What would you be telling them?
So I think first, you just have to say, resale's here to stay. Like, it's a big market. It's a growing market. You have to embrace it. Running from it is not a good strategy. You have to make it part of your brand community. It has to be an accepted customer journey, and you have to understand how that customer journey actually needs to go. So we're advising our customers or our clients to do several things. So I think the first is you've got to solve this as a separate business unit. You can't have your core merch team operate this as well. There's just too much inherent contradiction in that model. I think the second thing is you need to understand from a customer perspective, what does this customer journey look like? Because there is a way to embrace this and eventually get that customer back on the buy your core product kind of element of the journey. I think of this as an interim step to get, that keeps them in the family and then eventually migrates them up to your kind of core brand. And then last is like, there's so many benefits to this that you can embrace and frankly build your brand on, whether it's green, whether it's the Gen Z population just feels better about a more digital forward platform. There's just a lot of benefit that you can actually leverage.
Yeah, getting your Gen Z customer in or people who are first-time customers, regardless of what age they are, but really getting them to be able to have this exposure to the brand at a lower price point, but then graduate into, like you said, Dave, spending more money. It's funny, like when you're talking about it being a separate business unit, it kind of reminds me back in my days at Target when it was like e-com versus in-store, like long time ago, where it was like, well, wait, but you're right. There are completely different business models that people have to really nurture and grow and build the team so that they can work together to support both sides of this business. But it's not going away.
I eventually think they could be merged into one unit, but similar to ecom, if you try to put ecom with your core business, it was struggling to grow, right? I think you have to treat it separately, incubate it until it gets big enough to stand alone and be, a big enough part of the business that you know how to operate it.
Right. And how are you piloting that? How are you figuring out how to test that? We interviewed Adam Siegel. He's the founder of a company called Recurate. And it was one of my favorite expert interviews that we've done so far, because his product is doing that. Like, they're bringing, you're buying on the brand. It's very similar to the Madewell experience. However, it's getting credit in exchange for like products that you're finding and discovering for the first time on there. They're able to authenticate, as Kristin mentioned, that product firsthand right there. And it's a risk-free way to be testing this kind of concept and just build and grow into it. See what kind of customer adoption is there. If it's just online and you're just testing it there, you're able to gather so much information before you really bring this into one unit of in-store and e-com, like we're seeing Lululemon and Madewell doing.